You're listening to a Soul One podcast.
Welcome to our Halloween Spectacular, and Taylor, it's a really special episode today.
Yes, because we have Matt. I assume that's why it's special. I was going
to say because we're actually on Halloween and talking about Halloween. But no, you're right. You're right. We should introduce our guest,
the King of Halloween.
Yeah, King of Halloween.
Or Queen.
Or Queen, both. King and Queen of Halloween. Plus, was not only a very great listener from our Screening Kingston days, was on the show many times, too many to count. Many of you will know him from his work with Reel Out, the Queer Film Festival in Kingston. He's the executive director there. Big film fan, friend of Mike, friend of show. First time on our new show. My parents call him Matt Salton. It's Matt Salton. Welcome, Matt.
Well, I should have a word with your parents then.
I think it was an autocorrect phone thing.
Oh,
like I think my parents texted me one day. They know your name. It's just they're like, "Oh, we saw Matt Salton at the screening room," and it's like, no, it's Salton. But I think they, salted. You could, that's a word. So maybe they must have been an autocorrect on the phone kind of issue.
And it's stuck. It's stuck.
Yeah.
Is that Matt's new name?
I guess so. Were you salty to them though? I don't know. Maybe that was it.
Well, I'm thinking. I wonder if they were the couple behind. So there was a couple that snuck into the movies that we were at. We saw it was the Canadian one about the girl that had the powers, Newfoundland on the island. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like
I don't. No.
But there's a crazy Canadian movie with Frances Fisher about a girl with powers living in Newfoundland or whatever. Anyways, this couple just like walk in and sit in the front row in front of us and both get on their phones. And so I just like laid into them. And then afterwards, the couple behind me, I said, I'm so sorry for yelling, but it really upsetting. And then the man said, you could have handled that differently. And I was like, I doubt it. Know these people. And then I'm thinking, wait, were those Mike's parents?
I doubt it. That doesn't sound like them. So I doubt it. I mean, then maybe they'll listen to this and we'll find out it is them.
Yeah.
But I doubt it. That just doesn't sound
Mike, what's worse? Them. The couple being on the phone or the dad saying you could have handled that better? Both are pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, I still think the phone is worse because what are you doing on your phone in the middle of a movie?
Well,
that's weird.
It was the last 15 minutes of the movie. So they had tickets to the following movie. Okay. So instead of waiting in the lobby, they thought, hey, let's sit in and watch the last 15 minutes of this movie.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Weird.
Oh, whoever they are, especially if they're my parents, you were wrong. Like they were wrong people for that. That's ridiculous. I'm not a fan of that. I think you handled that marvelously, Matt.
Thank
you. There you go.
With the screening room staff, so I don't feel
yes. But anyway, we're going to talk about Halloween movies. That's why you're here. We're going to talk specifically about The Haunting of Julia. But also, Matt, you have some Halloween, I should say, movie suggestions for our fans who've been kind of asking a little bit for more suggestions, and you've come ready with some great films.
It's my genre, man. Horror's my head. Yeah. I mean, like it's funny because like when people think about what's scary, it kind of depends on like what you're in the mood for. Like, right. I mean, I know like some people like thrills, some people like gore, some people like camp, and then there's like I think like a lot of this modern or elevated horror is sort of a reflection of the politics of our time, and that frankly our politics are as scary as you're going to get. But I think, when you asked me about, recommendations for the listeners, I thought I'm going to go with like, I went for Supernatural. And what really bothered me at the time when I was a kid and then revisiting it as, a quote unquote grown up yelling at people in movie theaters.
Yeah.
And the movie that has always like freaked me right out, and holds up to me anyways, is this movie, The Haunting of Julia. The only place that it was actually referred to as The Haunting of Julia was in Canada, the US, when it came out in VHS. Like the actual movie was released as something called Full Circle, and it starred Mia Farrow. Of course, Mia Farrow, for most people, most of your listeners know from the horror classic Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Still sort of rocking that haircut, that Vidal Sassoon.
Yep.
Boyish cut. I can't remember what that's actually called.
Pixie.
But anyways, what's that?
A pixie cut.
That's right, the pixie. She's still sort of rocking that sort of Rosemary, sort of innocent, naive sort of waif type. But this time it's set, instead of in New York, at the Dakota, they're in London. So I'll set the scene. So we have Julia is this character, and at the very beginning, I'm not going to spoil it, but I will say something very traumatizing happens to our protagonist at the very beginning of the film, and it involves the death of a child. And in the grieving process, and starting a new life, getting divorced from her husband, she encounters a spectral visitor in her new home. And at first she starts to believe that it is her child. Oop, I guess the child. This is not really a spoiler.
I guess
like,
it's old enough.
It happens so soon that I don't.
It's the
consider
premise
it a
of the movie. Yeah,
true.
so
I won't go into details, but let's just say yes. Like, so she's very. So she thinks that this could be her child, and in the process of investigating, she finds out more information about who possibly died in her home. So it's sort of a mystery. It's very creepy. It's a very leisurely paced. Has an amazing synth soundtrack that's super creepy. And by the end of the film, it's like full on, almost like slasher / sort of like The Exorcist or The Omen. Sorry. So just like over the top, mysterious deaths, and thinking about the fact that it was originally called Full Circle. The final scene very much is full circle from what happens at the beginning of the film.
Yeah, which is so interesting. I mean, the different name thing is interesting, because I guess that had to do with, it was called Full Circle in Europe, but they changed the name for the US release. Is that what happened?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, because it is known as Full Circle just about everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, even when I watched it on Amazon, but through like one of Amazon's subscription services. I think it was Hollywood Suite.
Yeah. Yep. Did you do the 9-day, 10-day trial?
Yes,
whatever it is?
And then canceled immediately. But it looks like they have quite a few good movies on there. But anyways, it is, when you search it, it's The Haunting of Julia. And that's how it shows up on the streaming service. And then when the movie actually starts, and the title card is Full Circle.
Yeah.
So yes, and interestingly, it's based on a book, Just Julia. The name of the book is Julia.
Yes.
So it's always interesting how,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's always interesting how producers decide to do that.
Yeah. Well, and the way, Matt, the way you just described the movie, it's exactly the kind of horror movie that I really dig and get into, is because I just feel that the premise and the setup and that general sense of unease that anything could happen was always in the back of my head because of that opening scene.
Yes.
Where I'm like, well, anything could happen now.
Yep.
Like, I don't know what to expect. And I felt like it kept me on my toes in such a good way.
Mike, I felt like this was, what was the movie we watched a couple weeks ago about the Dust Bowl? Don't breathe. Hold your breath. Hold your breath, maybe. Don't breathe or hold.
Holding your breath. Yeah.
Yeah.
With Sarah Paulson movie.
Yeah. And we were talking about how there's this, it like really plays into the trope of whether or not she's succumbing to mental illness, but it's like very heavy-handed and obvious, what's going to happen. Whereas I think this movie kind of has the same premise because her husband's trying to commit her. That's like one of the plot points of this movie. And so it would be very easy to dismiss the supernatural elements of this movie. So all that to say, I think what the Don't Breathe movie or Hold Your Breath movie was trying to do was much more effectively conveyed in this movie.
Without a doubt, because this is, it's interesting, Taylor, this is what they used to call a movie. Like this subtle way of communicating, of setting you up, of not holding your hand, but show don't tell. Exactly. They're not I didn't feel like my hand was being held through this movie. I felt like now you've seen something, you can feel what you're feeling, and we're off. And I felt uneasy the entire time, and that's something that modern horror movies, especially ones we've been watching recently, just haven't done. And yeah, I thought it was, you're absolutely right. I thought the way it was executed left you always thinking, what is happening? Is this in her head? Or is this demonic? Is there something else going on? Like, what is happening here? And I thought this movie was really effective at doing that.
It was a real Matt, I like that you described it as a mystery. Whereas I think that movie we reviewed a couple weeks ago, had they played it like a mystery, it would have been more effective. So yeah, I agree. This was a very atmospheric. Also, pause, because I know Matt will appreciate this. Mia's costuming, chef's kiss. Her outfits are phenomenal in this movie. But she looks very good. The styling in this movie is top notch. Just wanted to have that aside.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I think I did watch so I bought it on Blu-ray because it had not been available until recently, like last year. There's a little EPK and the director really struggles with this film because it's not one of his favorite films. He hasn't been proud of it in the past. And just going back and revisiting it, he's like, okay, this isn't too bad. He's pretty hard on himself about it. I really think it's actually a pretty well-made film and definitely effective in just even the cinematography, the shadows, there is again, not trying to spoil too much, but there is a psychic medium who comes to visit the home, and her name is Mrs. Flood. Great character. And something happens to Mrs. Flood that night. That's other than the ending. That's what scared me the most. Was what just happened there, and what scared her so much that she had to leave immediately. We don't see what she sees.
No.
We just know that she is absolutely terrified. And I love that. I love that someone is so scared that they even whatever.
This movie lets your imagination do some work, which I also appreciate. Which I feel like is something we've lost a little bit from filmmaking. You get the odd movie that can kind of recapture it in a lot of ways. But yeah, I kind of agree with everything you're both saying, especially that point of just making it that mystery and giving you that doubt and that unexpectedness of sitting there being like, I don't know, like you just said, I don't know what she saw. I don't know what scared her. I don't know if this person is losing their mind, if they're being actually possessed, if there's something more going on. That lack of knowledge lets your brain do all this work. And I really appreciated that out of this movie. That I'm so surprised that the director doesn't like it. I feel like it holds up so well.
There's also this weird, and I don't know enough about this, but there was pushback from somebody, anyways, when they were going to release this. And without going into too much, whatever, there is a subplot about xenophobia. Xenophobia is very unique to the time period, and that was in the UK, especially, and that was this fear and distrust of Germans. And I think that even back in 78, 77, 78, I mean, it wasn't, it was still like only 30 years since,
fresh.
from World War II. And so, yeah, I mean, someone might argue that xenophobia is warranted, in that a lot of Germans a lot of Nazis are still alive and living elsewhere. But that there was a lot of pushback on that particular plot point, that people were like, well, no one's going to sympathize with this, which I found really interesting. Now, when I watched it, I was like, I guess that would have been a thing. Oh, well.
moving on.
Yeah. Also, I will say, if you like a good ghost story, then this is for you. If you find clowns scary, this is also for you. And that's all I'll say about the clown thing.
Yeah, well, and I also think if you're out there looking for probably a movie you haven't seen, because a lot of our audience, I think some of these older movies, they haven't quite found them yet. I feel like this does the work of scaring you without relying heavily on jump scares, and giving you that general feeling of anxiety and unsettlingness, which to me I like, and I know there's other people who will be out there.
Mike, that was going to be my next point, because probably 2 or 3 weeks ago we had that woman write in asking for movie recommendations that doesn't have jump scares. This is the perfect movie for that person.
So when whoever you were who wrote in, The Haunting of Julia on Amazon, you're listening to this on Halloween, so you might as well, that's what you're doing tonight.
There you go.
There you go. There's your Halloween movie.
Thanks, Matt.
Yes, thanks, Matt, for that. Matt, I know you're on a bit of a time crunch, so before we let you go, you had some other movies though that you thought you'd bring up for our listeners.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you do decide to check out The Haunting of Julia, and I obviously do highly recommend it, and it sounds like you both are on board as well, which is
Definitely
lovely to hear. There's 2 other movies that automatically come to mind that are very similar in feel, in even the look, and they also all deal with the death of a child, or like a child reaching out from the grave, and that would be Don't Look Now, from 1973. So made just a few years before Full Circle, with Donald Sutherland, Julie Christie, set in Venice, another mystery ghost story. And then 1980s, The Changeling, Canadian movie. It was filmed in Washington State, I believe, but it was Canadian financed film with George C. Scott. Another great horror mystery ghost story that still holds up well. And then as far as modern horror, I think we were talking about this before, but there's nothing scarier than movies that reflect the politics of our time. So I highly recommend a movie called Soft and Quiet. I always forget the name of it, but that is the name. It's from 2022. And I'll let you do your own research. I'm not going to tell you a thing about it, other than you think you know where it's going, and then you have no idea. And it couldn't be more relevant to what's happening right now with our politics. And then the other one I'll just throw in from 2015 is The Invitation, and I think that's maybe on Netflix. But it's the 20.
I think it is.
There's a couple of movies called The Invitation. This one's 2015. Set at a dinner party. Incredibly suspenseful, and puts you at unease as to what is actually happening at this dinner party of friends one fateful night.
That's awesome.
Spooky.
Yeah, that'll be very helpful to our fans who love the horror movies. I know you're pressed for time, Matt. Thank you so much for doing this, first of all.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. You're welcome back anytime, even not to talk about horror movies. You can talk about anything. You don't have to be shoehorned into horror. But yeah, The Haunting of Julia really gave us that, I feel like, a really nice movie that we hadn't seen to review this year and talk about for Halloween, which is exactly what we were looking for. You stepped up to the call really quickly. Before we let you go, we know you're heading off to the screening room tonight, which a couple nights by the time people listen to this, but you're checking out Carrie at the screening room, the original, the OG.
Yeah, yeah. So if people, listeners who aren't familiar with the screening room, I know you talk a lot about it on the show, and I mean it's this wonderful art house theater in Kingston and Kingston, Ontario, and they always do a great job of programming classic films. And this week it's The Lost Boys and the OG Carrie, and one of my colleagues has never seen it. So
What?
seen Carrie. So like
That was my reaction, Taylor.
yeah.
That's exactly what I said.
You were like iconic horror and a very good.
Horror. Like, I can think of a couple movies that are like you see when you're a kid, right?
Yeah.
Carrie is one of them. I would say Poltergeist is the other one because it's one of the horror movies that's PG.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, and you're right. And the screening room does a great job of bringing back the classics, which is great. So if you missed any of the stuff for Halloween, definitely check out the screening room because they're right on it with the themes. If there's a theme going on in the world, they'll get some classic films, which is amazing.
Does Wendy do all the programming?
No, I think she includes like a lot of the staff. The staff are all obviously huge film nerds, and I think they've started the Kingston Film Society, and so there's a lot of programming being done by the staff and their friends and colleagues, and
they're very good.
Kingston people at Queen's University, and yeah, I think it's sort of a collective programming thing. But Wendy's always had a really strong curatorial vision for a lot of things, even before she owned the screening room. Yeah. So, but I like that she does. It's not just her opinion. It's like it's a collective. It's a collective endeavor.
Thank you so much, Matt, for being here again, for doing this.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we hope you have a good time at Carrie and happy Halloween.
Yes, and everybody happy Halloween, and make sure you check your candy for razor blades.
What a great note to leave us on. Thanks, Matt.
Well, I just remembered I've got to put the razor blades in my apples. I mean, it is Halloween tonight. I mean, I'll be putting them in right now before I go.
There you go.
That's right. There you go. Matt Salton, everybody. Oh, there you go. That's Matt. What a way to end his segment.
But you know what? He's true to himself. That's what
he
about
is.
Him.
He is. From the story about those people at the screening room who could be my parents to the razor blade thing. Apples. I mean, that was wild. Before we move on, because I know we both put together some top 5 Halloween scary movies, I believe.
Yes.
We have a list. So before we get into our list to give more suggestions, just to wrap up our conversation about The Haunting of Julia, one of the things that I just really appreciated about this kind of suggestion from Matt, and I mentioned it very briefly, but just kind of finish off. We kind of texted him, like I texted him out of the blue like a month ago, just being like, we're looking for something. It's a review for Halloween. What's the scariest movie you can think of? And he stepped up. Like, he found something that we both hadn't seen, and I thought it was quite good. And it was kind of exactly, I feel like, what we needed.
Matt's definitely, I think, a good friend to have. He's the friend that would really be able to curate movies suggestions. Sometimes you ask people for movie suggestions, and it's just kind of like, it's just their list. I think Matt really rises to the occasion, like you said, and really is thoughtful about his picks. One thing I didn't get a chance to say while he was on air, knowing how much he loves horror, this movie was not what I went in. I was surprised by this movie.
Were you?
Only because it was a slower burn. But that being said, he loves the genre so much. I guess I shouldn't be surprised because he likes all horror movies. But I also know that he's a big fan of the Halloween franchise. So I was almost thinking I was thinking more that, less supernatural. But there you go. Matt contains multitudes. And like we all do. And so I was pleasantly surprised by this movie. And I will say that it would be a very good, like we were saying about that woman who wants a movie that's not a jump scare. That being said, though, Mike, I don't know if this is a movie that I would pull out at a Halloween party with a bunch of friends.
No, I feel like this is a more a serious time.
Yes.
You want to do you're with a close friend or a small group and you really want to watch something scary. Yeah. And one of the things, I've known Matt for a long time, and this doesn't surprise me because this definitely fits into his realm of movies. But Matt, like, you're right. Matt was always he was always the friend in my friend group that was as interested in movies as me. So it was so interesting that back in my Kingston days, I used to take a big group to see the big Marvel movies, like all 15 people. He was always part of that group, but he was also the friend you could count on when it's like, I just want to go watch this stupid Independence Day second movie. And Matt grew up also in the 90s, and he'll go with me. You know what I mean? Like, we were like, I remember, him and I would go see some of these movies where, like, we know it's going to suck, but it's part of our childhood. So we, like, have to go. So yeah, Matt does contain multitudes, but I don't know. I feel like when you have a real film lover, you get a lot of depth in their interests. Because I would even say you have a lot of depth in what you like, even though you like to pigeonhole yourself sometimes. You do like a wide variety of movies and types of movies.
I think so. I mean, yeah, I think so. So we didn't get a chance to ask Matt what his rating was. I assume it's a see it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have recommended it. Do you feel it's also a see it, Mike?
Yeah, I would give it a see it because I think it's my kind of scary movie. I do agree with you. Like, I think it's the type of movie where you and a partner or husband or wife or boyfriend or girlfriend or close family member, like, there's like 2 or 3 of you max in a room, and you want to just watch a movie that's scary. This is for you. This isn't pull it out with the 6 friends and eat some candy.
This isn't what I would describe as like a fun horror movie.
No, it's scary. It's psychological.
Heavy subject material.
but I would give it a see it. What about you?
Agreed. Yeah, no, agreed.
Yeah.
Okay,
let's get into our lists of other Halloween movies. Bit of a shorter episode this week because I'm kind of pressed for time. I got a lot going on, Taylor. I'm a busy guy.
You're an important guy. You're busy and important.
Busy and important. So we put together a top 5 list of, I believe it's the movies we think are the scariest for Halloween. I don't know if it was just Halloween in general. I made a list that was kind of a mix, but I put together 5 movies that I remember at one point in time in my life scaring me.
I didn't think so much like, oh, this is the movie that I would watch at a Halloween party. This is just like, these are movies that I think are very scary. Certainly you could watch them probably on Halloween. But I wanted to pick movies that, like you, at one time definitely scared me.
Yeah.
And I think Matt alluded to this, and it was I saw an article, Stephen King. I didn't read the whole article, but Stephen King makes the same point. The movies that we find truly scary often change as we get older, right? So like movies, and Matt mentioned how, you know, in high school or when you're is school aged, there's kind of these like seminal movies that you watch, like Carrie, Poltergeist, and to me, like, those movies were very scary when I watched them as a younger person. Whether or not I would be scared, I think those movies hold up, and I think they're worth watching. So they would make a very good Halloween watch, Poltergeist and Carrie, but I don't know if I would say that they truly scare me anymore. Does that make sense? So that's why I tried to pick movies that even if I was to watch them now, I would be scared by.
I agree. I did the same thing. Like, I picked 5 movies that, probably scared me a lot more when I was younger, but still, especially if you're introducing it to someone for the first time or you haven't really seen it in a long time, I still think they hold up. Yeah, I did the same thing.
So
are yours in order? Because mine are in order. Like, I have a 1 to 5.
I never put mine in order.
Okay.
There's no ranking.
I'm gonna go 5 to 1.
Like, that's like making you choose your favorite child. All my babies are equal. All these movies are equal.
I think people have favorite children. I don't agree with that, actually. No, I honestly,
I have one kid. I only have the one kid, so that's right. But I can't.
But I'm telling you, people have a favorite kid.
As the least favorite child, Mike.
What, me?
You saying that? You know your parents have favorites because you're the least favorite? I'm only kidding. You're probably their favorite.
I just can't believe that people wouldn't have a favorite child. Like, I just can't. You're telling me if one of your children became a murderer, you wouldn't favor the other one. You know what I mean? Like, come on. like it's ridiculous. Like, you know, if you have
ask me again when I have my second kid.
Okay, I will. And you won't admit it because you're a nice person, and no person would ever admit it. But in a candid moment off air, maybe you would. Okay, so I'm going to go 5-1 then with my list because
5 being least, number 1 being best,
one being best. But again, this is a top 5 list, so it beat out hundreds of others.
Yes.
But shall we go back and forth?
Yeah,
I think that would be fun. Like, I'll say one, you say one. You know.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to start with number 5, Signs from M. Night Shyamalan. This is a movie that scared me a lot as a kid, which doesn't really scare me now, but I remember being like loving this movie, but also being terrified of a couple particular alien moments. There's probably only 3 or 4 scary moments in the whole movie, but the entire unsettling atmosphere that he built with that film, like every time it became nighttime, every time they turned on the news, every time something else happened, like this escalation. You know, the scene specifically I'm thinking of where you know, Mel Gibson's character is putting his kids to bed, and he looks out the window and there's something on the roof, and because it's middle of night, all you see is an outline, and he thinks it's just a kid, a teen, a youth who's running around. And then like one of the funniest scenes happens after. But like this movie did such a good job of balancing humor to make you laugh when you needed to, but then also making you scared and unsettled. And I'll always remember this movie.
I actually have not seen Signs, and as a non-alien, I'm not into like aliens.
Signs?
No, I know, but I remember.
Oh, Taylor!
I think I remember my sister watching it downstairs while I had already gone to bed. I think she had a couple girlfriends over, and I remember them like screaming so loud.
There are 4 scream moments,
and I think it's because my mom had gone downstairs and on purpose banged on the washing machine.
That would do it.
Yeah, that's the type of mom I have who would do that. So anyways, I know, and it was such a huge cultural phenomenon that was like at the height of M. Night Shyamalan. So that's and what I'm hearing, Mike, is that even though it might not scare you per se, probably someone who hasn't seen it before, doesn't know the twists or the reveals or whatever,
and I
would
think
be scared still.
This is one of those movies with not a lot of twists, but more so reveals or things that you find out. And I just think it's M. Night at his best. And in particular, like Taylor, I actually think you would like this movie. I do. I think the alien
and Joaquin Phoenix is in it, right?
Joaquin Phoenix is in it. He gives a fantastic performance. Yep, they're both really good. One of the Culkins is one of the children.
Cool.
Can't remember which one.
I want to say Kieran.
Yeah, Kieran maybe.
But I could be wrong. So again, my list isn't in order. I'm just gonna throw out movies.
Okay.
The original Exorcist.
That's on my list too.
Yeah, I don't know the exact year, but 79 maybe.
That's my number 3. So we'll reveal number 3 is The Exorcist. So there you go.
That's a movie that I watched for the first time. I want to say in high school. Definitely scared me. And then rewatched it in a religion on film class. Definitely still scared me. I think like some people will probably say like, oh, the makeup is like a little hokey. Like I could see if no one has ever seen it before and they were to watch it now, they may be hypercritical of some of the special effects or the makeup. For me, I think this movie holds up and is quite scary. And interestingly, when Matt said like, most of my movie recommendations are of a supernatural element. I've talked about this before, I think on the old show, Mike. For me, the supernatural elements of things are always most scary. Like I grew up in a household where like the supernatural was real, you know, like it wasn't like our ghosts real. It was like, when are you gonna see one type of household. So for me, supernatural stuff still remains the scariest, because I think it's more likely that I'm going to see a ghost than ever meet a serial killer, like a slasher flick. So that's why it feels real in a way. And allegedly it's based on a true story, although the true story is very Very, 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 very different than the actual Exorcist movie. But if you are interested, you can give yourself further nightmares by looking up the true story behind The Exorcist. So yeah, that one holds up for me.
Yeah, and I think I considered 2 other Exorcist movies, but I thought you've got to put the one that kicked it off. Because we wouldn't have The Exorcism of Emily Rose or The Last Exorcist, which are 2 of my favorite movies, without the first one. So yeah, it's on my list too. I agree with everything you said. The Exorcist. My number 4 movie is The Sixth Sense, another Shyamalan film. Now, have you seen The Sixth Sense?
No.
Oh, Taylor.
So that movie came out.
I can't even talk about it if you haven't seen it, because you can't talk about this movie. You just can't with it. Like,
I mean, I know a little bit. Like, I do know the big twist in that one. For me, that movie is such a huge cultural touchstone that I feel like I've seen it without actually seeing it. Like, it's spoofed. It's like whatever. Everyone knows the plot.
It has the type of jump scares that to me work really well.
Right.
And like, again, like thinking back to like scenes that resonate, there's a particular scene, because it's all about this kid, right? Haley Joel Osment, who says he sees dead people. You know, near the beginning of the movie, when the mom's trying to figure out what is going on, you know, drawers are like left open in this room, and she's like, why are you doing this? Whatever. She leaves the kitchen, the camera follows her. She comes back, it's on her, and then it's revealed every drawer in the kitchen's open, and the kid's just sitting at the chair. That's scary. And like that type of stuff is like those like little not like the
poltergeist. It's like it's like the scene where the mom walks out of the kitchen and poltergeist, and then walks back, and all the chairs are stacked on the table.
That's right. Yeah, it's
very scary.
It's something being wrong in such a dramatic way.
Yeah.
And I thought, the movie overall does a really good job of that. So even if you take the twist out of it, the movie, for ambiance and for feeling and for kind of the approach to it. And again, that questioning of, does he see dead people? Like, you know, Bruce Willis plays this psychiatrist who's sort of sent to work with this kid. What is it in his head? What is going on? Like, how is he going to work through it? Like, there's all those things that I feel elevates it to beyond just being a scary movie, like a really good movie. And I do think it holds up for people who have never seen it. So cool. Sixth Sense is number 4.
I have a feeling this movie is also on your list. The original Conjuring movie, or I should say the first installment in the Conjuring universe.
It did not make it.
Really?
Almost did. It would have been number 6. It did not make it. No,
because we talk about that movie a lot. I mean, it's a
fantastic movie.
It's a fantastic movie. It's the movie that kicked off the Conjuring universe. I think that is a cinematic universe which has, I think the term is diminishing returns as the movies have spun off and has gotten farther away from the core story. I don't think the movies are as scary, with even the Nun 2 being not really scary at all. So
no, like the Nun was, I would say, the first Nun movie, but the Nun 2, not like, the further they've gotten into this, they haven't really recaptured the magic from the first one.
The Annabelle movies are kind of hit or miss. Like, I think I really liked the third one.
Yeah.
I don't think you like the second one as much as I do. But anyways, so I think for if you, again, have never seen the Conjuring movie, you will be scared by this one. Very, very, very good movie, and very, very chilling. So, and again, allegedly based on a true story. So you could just do a rabbit hole on Wikipedia of reading all the stories that these movies are based on.
Well, it just didn't make it onto my list, mainly because, like, as we said, my number 3 is The Exorcist. But my number 2 might be on your list, because we've talked about it before. The Visit.
Yep, that's on my list, 100%.
Yes. I just think The Visit, it's my number 2 because I've since rewatched it, since seeing it in the theaters and being terrified. I've rewatched it and been scared every time. I think it's just a frightening movie. I think it's M. Night at his absolute best. I've got 3 M. Night Shyamalan movies on this list.
Are you a fan? I know you are.
Well, I am a fan of his work. I honestly am. And I think The Visit is the example of that, of a more recent film of his that captures everything that you want in a sort of scary, unsettling movie with some like top-notch performances and a lot of things like you've brought, like based in reality and based in real life circumstances and believable circumstances.
A little bit of a mystery.
Yeah.
There's there is that. Are there supernatural elements at play? Is it just old people being old people? Like what's going on?
Yeah.
So that movie to me is so scary that Mike, I don't know if I'll ever rewatch it.
I every time I've watched it, I've been like, I want to be scared. Like that's what I want to do. I will say I've even watched this for extra protection in the middle of a sunny day, and it's still
it's so stressful and so scary and like very like I'm thinking of the particular scene where they're under the deck and the grandma.
Yes.
Oh,
the deck and the bed near the end, like the bed bit. And I think one of the things that sucks for me is when I do like to watch a horror movie and turn all the lights out, be downstairs. I have a all 100% covered in black fur cat that will pounce at you for no reason, like will jump up and pounce. So here you are watching a movie, and then suddenly this like black object like jumps at you, and it's just she more than once that cat has terrified me in the middle of watching a scary movie, and The Visit's one of those examples. So
ooh, chilling. Okay, so The Visit's on my list, so I'll follow. So I think we mentioned this last week. I said The Visit and It Follows are two of my like favorite modern horror movies, and It Follows is another one that like I would be hard pressed to watch again because I found it so scary the first time. I saw this in theaters. It's a very simple concept. Essentially, it's almost like, I don't know how to describe it, Mike, like a virus, but essentially when you sleep with someone, and this isn't a spoiler because you find this out at the very beginning of the movie, you sleep with someone and it passes on the curse. And essentially the thing, we don't know what it is, it proceeds to follow you. And it's like so creepy, so unsettling, so like anxiety inducing, really good performances. So for me, that is hands down like one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. And
it's a good one. Okay, my last one, number one movie to me, I think this is the scariest movie I've ever seen. It's somewhat recent. It's a movie called Cobweb. So I reviewed this last year, I think.
Yes.
And I've since brought it up. Cobweb, it's a terrifying movie. It takes place basically in this home. You have these parents who have this one child, a young boy, who starts hearing knocking, scratching, and whispering coming from the wall of his bedroom. And it is essentially about that and what happens around it. But it goes in a couple different interesting directions. There's a lot of weird things with is there something up with the parents? Are they a little off? Or is it all from the kid's perspective? And kids think things are scarier and more mysterious and than they actually are. And it makes you question the narrator, because you're seeing it more or less from the kid's perspective, a little bit of scene work elsewhere as the movie goes on, but you're getting a lot of his point of view, and you're wondering how much you can trust that coming from sort of like a younger brain,
unreliable narrator.
Unreliable, exactly. And I think that this movie is more than just a voice in the wall kind of movie. It starts to sort of expand. Really, it's like it's one kind of movie, and then it turns kind of into a different kind of movie, and then the final act of the movie is a third kind of movie. It's wild. It's a wild ride, but I still think it, as a horror movie, it does a fantastic job of jump scares, unsettling behavior, ambience, lighting, mood, color, scene, set, and acting to really kind of bring it together. So Cobweb to me is still the scariest movie I think I've seen of all time.
So my last movie, and again, this isn't like rating. So it almost feels kind of like wah after you announced your movie. But for me, the Blair Witch Project still holds up.
Really?
But
That's
I
so
wonder if it, for audiences, if you haven't seen it yet, people will feel the same way about it that I feel with The Sixth Sense and Signs, that like it's so part of a certain zeitgeist. It's been spoofed to death. Everyone knows the plot of it. But for me, similar to how you said The Exorcist is on your list because it is like the ship that launched all the other exorcism movies, and like ever since, like every exorcism movie is just essentially a retelling of The Exorcist. So for me, every found footage movie is just a spin-off of the Blair Witch Project. Like if you're looking for the original, the OG Big Daddy found footage movie, this is the movie that started it all. So I watched this Halloween in my youth group, in my church basement and youth group, and I remember being very scared. So I don't. So you seem surprised by that. You don't find this movie scary?
I definitely did the first time I watched it. Like there were definitely unsettling moments. I guess to me, I felt a lot of the hype, especially I had heard about this movie before seeing it. Like I saw it later. A lot of people were like, "Oh, there's like a sense of mystery around whether or not this was real, and someone just found this footage somewhere." And from the very beginning of watching, I'm like, this is so clearly not, like, this is so clearly a movie.
Right.
Like, it's a found footage, and it was unique, and I appreciated that, but I'm just like, why are people, it's like the War of the Worlds thing. I'm like, how could you be so dumb to think this is anything but like, it's clearly a found footage movie. But yeah, I definitely found it scary the first time. I think enjoyed it more so than others do. A lot of people were like disappointed by like the ending of it and disappointed by nothing really happening in the movie. But I did like it. I'm just surprised it would make this list for kind of 5 movies. Like I just didn't think of it in that sense.
Maybe I'll have to reassess, but I don't know. I think
if you like it, right?
This isn't a movie that I've revisited since watching it. So
you remember what you felt when you watched it when you were younger. Yeah.
And I saw it in a group, you know what I mean? Like you're in the church basement. Ooh, like that's that whole atmosphere. So I have a couple honorable mentions.
Yeah, let's hear it.
One of them being Pet Sematary, the original Pet Sematary from the 70s. 70s seem to be like, I don't think modern horror can do it quite as good as the 70s did it for whatever reason. I don't know if it's because the 70s relied on practical effects and they had to get more creative, but I think the original Pet Sematary and the original Amityville Horror are both honorable mentions for me. Both movies that profoundly scared me when I first watched them as a kid and as a young teen. So whether or not they're scary now would be hard to say, but I think if you were to watch the original Amityville Horror, I think you could get some chills and thrills. And then if we're one other one that's kind of very different than all the other movies that I recommended was Don't Breathe. This is not to be confused with the movie we can't remember the name of that we mentioned earlier this episode. This movie came out, I think I was still in university. I don't know the exact year, but it's essentially these people decide to do a home invasion of a blind man, thinking that it's going to be like a really easy hit, so to speak. Like he's blind. It's going to be really easy to rob him. And then they find out, no.
Not easy.
And it's not easy. And it's there's like a very twisted ending. So that... and a little, I guess you could say a little bit of a mystery element as well. That movie, again, it's not supernatural. I don't know. I wouldn't go so far as to say like slasher, but it's like, it's a home invasion gone wrong, essentially. And then one last one that I wanted to recommend, actually maybe 2. Well, if we're gonna stick to the theme of these are things that actually scared me, then the TV show that's on Netflix, The Haunting of Hill House, by, I forget the name of the guy, but he's done quite a few things for Netflix now. I was gonna mention Midnight Mass, but that one didn't scare me the way that The Haunting of Hill House scared me. Although Midnight Mass is also very, very good. So those were kind of my honorable mentions if you're looking for a couple extra things to watch.
I think that's a great list. That brings us to the end of our Halloween episode. Just a quick announcement. Next week, we're doing a full episode just with fan questions. We have a bunch to catch up on. We've been teasing and mentioning that we were going to do this. It'll be what we call a mailbag episode next week. So everything we're talking about comes from you, the fans. So if you still want to contribute, there is time to do that. soul1arts.ca. You can fill out the form on the podcast app, or our old website is still up, screeninginkingston.com. You can find us there, fill out the form, ask any questions, talk about movies, give us your thoughts. We are going to be answering them all next week. So join us next week for our first ever mailbag episode on this new show. We used to do it a lot in Screening in Kingston. We love it. And that will be next week's episode.
Go see some movies.
Happy Halloween.
Thank you for listening to You Had Me at Skip It, a Soul One Arts Inc. podcast. This podcast is produced by Mike Shepard and Austin Spinner Summer. It is a project of Soul One Arts Inc. To learn more about Soul One and all the great work that Soul One is doing in the arts community, especially in film, theater, and other performing arts, visit soul1arts.ca. You can contribute to this podcast by visiting soul1arts.ca and going to the podcast tab. You'll find all the information on You Had Me at Skip It and how you can get your questions read on air each week. Thank you again for listening.